Hello, friends. Hello, hello. Great to be with you guys again. I'm Dr. Renee Tucker, equine holistic veterinarian for over 30 years. And today we're on to talk about equine Cushing's. So, today I'm going to talk about what Cushing's is, what's the real cause of it, and how we can fix it. If perchance you are looking for all of the blood work tests and the hormones and things like thyroid releasing hormone and ACTH tests and DEX suppression tests, I am not covering that. The traditional medicine is available in many places on the internet. Plus, if you are having a Cushing's problem right at the moment, you probably want to consult your veterinarian for your particular horse and what might be best for them if you want to go the traditional route. So, we will be talking about what's really going on with Cushing's. So, just so we're all on the same playing field, the Cushing's symptoms that I'm talking about is where the horse has a long hair coat, also with difficulty shedding. It can be patchy shedding. Some horses never shed, and it can be years, honestly, where they don't shed, which is kind of crazy, but that can be what happens. They'll be dull, low energy. They can have decreased muscle or muscle wasting, as it's called. Sometimes have a pot belly, and their immune system is kind of depressed, so they can have multiple random infections. Those are the general symptoms of Cushing's. Notice that Cushing's is a syndrome, which means there's a collection of symptoms, and so we call that collection something. Cushing's syndrome is therefore not actually a diagnosis. It's just a bunch of symptoms that we see happening. Then, people went ahead and did an autopsy or a necropsy on the horse, they tend to find part of the pituitary gland, and it looks like it's enlarged. And so they say that it's PPID, that's pars pituitary, so part of the pituitary intermediate dysfunction. So equine Cushing's is officially PPID because science likes to science and use a lot of science words. So I'm talking about Cushing's, which I think is the first person who coined the term for the horse's collection of symptoms. All right. Before I forget, if you look online now for symptoms of Cushing's, you will also find a list in the list laminitis and abnormal fat deposits. So what is currently happening online is that they are conflating or putting together EMS, equine metabolic syndrome, with Cushing's and laminitis. Now, certainly, some horses with EMS have Cushing's, some horses with Cushing's have laminitis, but as far as the primary causes are concerned, these are all separate diseases. Cushing's, laminitis, EMS, or metabolic, they're all separate. And definitely, some horses have more than one. They can even have all three. But that doesn't mean that the symptoms of Cushing's are all three. It's just the pituitary symptoms. Okay. So, as I said, when they see the pituitary gland in a deceased horse, it looks larger. And so it does kind of look like it has a tumor or an adenoma. They call it a tumor. And I'm here to tell you it's not a tumor. Okay, that was terrible. Let me try that again. It's not a tumor. Dang it. Okay, I'm terrible at that. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger's, my rendition of his line from Kindergarten Cop, which is excellent, but I did terrible. But the point is, it's not a tumor. Okay. It's not a tumor. Here's what's happening. Let me just cut to the chase. Yeah? Who's got time for rambling? Except for me. Okay. But what it is environmental chemicals. And these chemicals have an affinity for the hypothalamus of the brain. The hypothalamus sits right above the pituitary gland and squishes it. It flattens it, this part of it, and it makes it look like it's larger than it really is. So whether it is or is not a tumor, it's not a tumor, but anyways, the point is what's happening, the pituitary is not getting the signals it needs to do its pituitary job. It's literally like it's sleeping on the job. Certainly, hormones have something to do with it. But I would like to say that the brain has a lot more going on than a bunch of hormone signaling. It's got hormones, yes, but it also has enzymes, neurotransmitters, and not to mention all the electrical activity of the brain. So, us being humans, at the moment, all we know is that we can measure the hormones that's in the blood. And so that's what we do. And this is kind of why we get false negatives and false positives. And then we try to fast the horse before the test to make sure it's quote unquote accurate. But guys, fasting the horse then is actually quite a stressor on a horse, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, which would do what? Increase cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which would affect all the other hormones. So, frankly, that's all a big mess. So, instead, what we need to do is realize there are chemicals with an affinity for the hypothalamus. And you know what's cool is even the mainstream media is talking about these environmental chemicals now. They're actually calling them forever chemicals. I just saw it on the mainstream news the other day, which is kind of good that they're talking about them because they realize these forever chemicals, as they're calling them, can't be removed by the body normally. They're stuck there because some of them have different affinities. That's kind of the technical word for them. It's sort of like just a magnetic attraction, a pretty strong magnetic attraction. So they can't grab the chemicals with the immune system or flush them out with the circulation. It just, they're stuck. So Cushing's, chemicals in the hypothalamus smushes the pituitary. Pituitary cannot get any signals. The pituitary gets signals, for example, one example, from the pineal gland. Pineal gland is the one who is responsible for the circadian rhythm and the changing in seasons and should you have long hair or not. So the pituitary gets no signals because it's squished from the pineal. And so it never does its job to tell the horse, hey, you should start shedding now. And all those other things that the pituitary gland does, including all the muscle gaining and the energy and all that stuff. So what can we do? Basically, what we really need to do is get rid of those chemicals that are supposedly forever that have the affinity for the hypothalamus. Because, by the way, when the body has chemicals that are stuck there, these so-called forever chemicals, the body then must add water to that area because that will dilute the chemicals and then the chemicals will not be causing harm to the body part itself. But it does make it fat and heavy. So what we need to do is get rid of them. Then the hypothalamus can actually shrink back down and the pituitary will start getting the signals again. It'll wake right back up. Okay, great. How can we do that? Well, that's the problem. But it's not. I can solve it for you. Here we go. There are a couple techniques out there that I'm familiar with, such as like acupuncture and red light therapy. I am sure there's more that can help a little bit break those affinity bonds with that chemical and help release it. Now, what I know works 100% is TBT, Tucker BioKinetic Technique. And what I've done is put that energy into a product. It's an herb. The herbs, tiny little bit, have the energy, and it slowly but surely breaks the tight connection, that magnetic attraction of that chemical in the hypothalamus so the body can get rid of it. I know it sounds crazy. Why doesn't everyone think of this? Just because they're not thinking on energy terms. They're thinking on hormones because that's what they can measure. As an energy person, I can measure and test and trial and error, lots of fun energy stuff. So it's super cool. Okay, so there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. It just, for the average Cushing's horse, it takes about 1 to 2 months of this stuff to clear it out. You could also certainly hire a TBT practitioner or become one yourself. And I just wanted to say one more thing that I think is interesting. You may not, but here we go. About chemicals in the brain. Now, when I say chemicals, I'm obviously talking about forever chemicals that are bad for us. The thing is, the body has chemicals in it. So there are natural chemicals the body has or they make to talk and communicate throughout the body. So there are natural, healthy chemicals. We are talking about bad chemicals that the body would like to get rid of but can't. Okay, but here's this fun part. I just want to tell you this story. I don't know why, but here you go. About this psychiatrist who's been practicing like 30 years, and he's recently started a podcast. He's on YouTube. Jerry Marzinski, I'm pretty sure that's his name, but his podcast is Engineering Mental Sanity. Engineering Mental Sanity. But I just want to tell you this little story because it's so fun. So he graduates from psychiatry school, and what you learn in psychiatry is there are chemical imbalances in the brain, kind of similar to what we're talking about in a way. That's why I'm bringing it up. Chemical imbalances in the brain cause all these psychiatric problems, and you just need to diagnose them correctly and then give the drugs that will then balance the brain chemistry. And Jerry's all about, this is great. I want to help people's psychiatric issues. But as he gets started, I believe his first job was in a hospital. Then, you do your residency or whatever. And he's following along the doctors and he asks, well, we didn't learn this in school, but what are the blood tests that we do to measure the chemicals? Or are there different tests? And what's their normal baseline for chemicals so we know which chemicals are imbalanced? Dude, he got yelled at. He got shut down. You don't ask about that because you know what? There aren't any tests. They don't know what chemicals are in the brain, all of them, and they don't know what the normal amounts are supposed to be. So basically, may I just say, and this is what Jerry says, they're just making it up. They're just making it up completely, that there's a chemical imbalance. There's no papers that actually ever prove this. It's just made up and been made up long enough that that's what's still happening in psychiatry, even though there have been multiple papers and even whole books made saying, no, it's not a chemical imbalance. It's not. It's different stuff. And I don't know what it all is. I just know the horse part. Now that's separate from our horse part, but I just wanted to share that a lot of what we know or we think we know is very incomplete, if not outright wrong. So if you're interested in brain chemistry, Jerry Marzinski is very interesting to listen to. But for your Cushing's horse, you got these symptoms that makes it a syndrome. Long hair, low energy, decreased muscles, decreased immune system. Just because there are bad chemicals with an affinity to the hypothalamus, which makes the hypothalamus bigger and fat because of the water, squishes the pituitary. Pituitary is getting no signals. Pituitary is not doing its job. In order to fix this, which you can fix it because it's not a tumor, okay? You remove the chemicals. Best way to do that is by doing TBT or TBT Revival products. And that's all I have to say today. I hope that answered your question. Feel free to put any questions. You can email me at support@Tucker BioKinetic anytime you want. And I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.